I want to thank you for having Susan and me here. Your Susan, your secretary, I think she is, she's made us feel really good and explained everything to us. But the one thing I wasn't quite sure of this morning was that why am I getting up to that soon? Shouldn't there be more preliminaries to make it more exciting? But I'm here, and I'm so glad I'm here. I should just say a little bit about my family. Susan and I will be celebrating our 8th anniversary this coming Tuesday. And we're going to Saskatoon from here. We'll be speaking in a church in Hague this next Sunday. And in the meantime, we'll celebrate. My brother's taking me fishing. It's going to be a great week. But I'm thankful. I'm just so shocked at the great congregation. Do you know the last time I was with your church was in this building in the first part? But before that, when you were in the first building, how many of you remember the name Peter Weeb, the pastor at that time? There was quite a few. Well, he called me up one day and he says, Martin, we have a problem here. People can't understand the English and we need help. I said, Peter, I'm the last guy you should call for that. No, he says, you can do it. And so he asked me to do a series on church administration. And I still remember I was using material from the Soteria twins. Some of you may remember them. And I had a really hard time. But we got through and we created a very nice film. I don't know if any of you were there at that time. Does anyone remember that? No, it's so long ago. It's still true, though. And we really Peter and I became very close friends. And not long before he died, Susan and I had the occasion to visit them and share time with them. And he was on a wheelchair by then and having a pretty tough time of life. But he was a happy, wonderful man, a friend of ours. To carry this whole Plotige thing forward a little bit, I'm speaking in the, I think they call it the Mennonite Gospel Church in Vauxhall. And Mr. Kettler, Jake Kettler, is the kind of the intern. They don't have a pastor. And I usually speak in the angel service. And then he said, I want to throw something at you. I need someone to speak in the Low German. I said, Lord, why does this thing keep coming back at me? I grew up a Mennonite Low German, but I've been away from that for many, many years. I said, no, thank you. You can do it, he said. You know something? I went home. I figured if I can get away from him, I can just call him and tell him on the phone I can't make it. So I'm prepared to give him that call. And just like that, a verse of Scripture pops into my head. You know what it is? What it was? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I said, Lord, I can argue with Jake Kettler, but I can't argue with you. It gets even worse. He phoned me up here. By the way, we had a great service, and we had a lot of fun, but I can't tell you that my German was any better than I predicted. But he calls me up now. I'm going to be there again in a few weeks, maybe a month or so. We need another Low German speaker. This guy just doesn't give up. And I wasn't going to wait until I got another verse from the Bible. I said, yeah, I'll do it. But life is really fun if you allow it to be, and if you're willing to be a little silly at times, little and don't he? And Ann and I, my first wife, we were in your church with Compassion many years ago, and I understand you're not working with Compassion from what your pastor told me, so I'm very glad to fill in and to tell you that we work with an organization that's really amazing. We have a director from Guatemala. He's a wonderful guy. He loves the Lord, and he loves Canadians. He loves to work with us, and we have a great time working with him. Now, Child Care International is not a large organization. We have presently about 3,000 children that we're sponsoring, but we have some unique things that we do that we feel very thankful to God for. All our children attend a school. We don't sponsor children who don't go to a school. You may know that in third world countries, the lifespan of most people on the average is between 45 and 50, and so they depend on their children to support them when they get older. And so our kids now getting into this program are able to grow up with a 10 to 12 education and get a job or start a business and help out their parents. We're quite excited about this, and it's working. There's one new thing that just happened quite recently. You know, you also heard the old saying, when we do missionary work, we should teach these people how to fish. Don't give them fish, teach them how to fish, get their own fish. Well, we started a little program now, it's called the Entrepreneurial Program. We pick on children, grades ages 11 or 12, grades 5 or 6. There's a number of examples. I'll give you one little example of what we're doing. This little girl, she's 11 years old, and she said, I'd like to start a business. So we loaned her some money. I don't know the details because I don't live there, but our directors out there would. They gave her a loan and said, now, if you can pay this loan back in 1 year, we'll give you another loan. We'll give you an even bigger loan. And so she got going. She bought herself 8 laying hens and started selling eggs. In 1 year, she paid back the loan. She now had 80 laying hens, and she was well able to help out her parents, and she's still thriving. And what we have noticed in the culture of most third world people, they're used to begging. They're used to, please give me. They become so discouraged with the economics in their country that they don't believe they can do anything. I've seen it. I've been to some of these countries. The problem is, we can do anything we want to if we put our mind to it, even in third world countries. We've seen it happen. There are some very wealthy people in third world countries. They're either very wealthy or very poor. Now, we know that their governments are corrupt and all that, but in spite of that, we have a corrupt government here too, so what's new? I'm talking federal, please understand me. I shouldn't talk politics here, should I? That's not very nice. But that's part of being silly, you know. We have to be willing to reach out and not be afraid of making a fool of ourselves. I was walking down the hallway in the Beddington Mall in Calgary, and in the mall, in the hallway, they have benches scattered ever so often, and I found a bench that had 3 Chinese ladies sitting there. You know how they are? They're very submissive women. These women are really submissive. Anyway, quiet, looking down, ashamed to even show their face. And I walked right up to them, and I said, and they bursted out laughing, and they couldn't get rid of them after that. Someone saw them. And you know, we can make a difference. And even now, sometimes I see some of those same women, and they know me. I want to talk about that a little bit later. But when we sponsor children, we look for the potential in that child. We look for what they can do when they get older. So we try to give them some education, teach them. We have wonderful people in these different countries, very committed teachers and also pastors that work with us. We don't own property. We never buy property. We facilitate. We have products where people can give money to build a house. They can buy a goat. They can buy chickens. There's all those kind of things available. Susan and I, we are focused on sponsorship because we feel that a long-range program for our sponsored children is the very best we can do for them. It leads them into a life of adulthood where they can actually contribute to the world. It also has a wonderful way of preparing them for the Lord's work. Our mission is very focused on the Lord in the lives of our children. They learn to sing about Jesus. They learn to talk about Jesus. We were in Colombia some years ago, and this little girl, this mother came to my wife, and she said, my little girl came home the other day. She said, I asked Jesus into my heart. She said, what does that mean? She had no idea. And my wife directed her to the project. She said, I think it would be better if they continued this than for me, because I'm leaving. So she went to her pastor and the people that were working in the school and was able to find peace with Jesus. This is the children in our sponsorship. It might surprise some of you when I say this. They're among the best missionaries we have. Children are so believable. They're so honest, so uninhibited. I'd rather have a child rebuke me than an adult for a number of reasons. I know they would tell me exactly the way it is, with no, can't block that light. And they are able to get to your heart because they're children. I love children, and I have a lot of fun with children. But I think we can say that Jesus kind of had the same attitude, didn't he? He don't hurt a child. In fact, he went so far as to say, it were better for you that a rock was tied onto you and you were dropped into the bottom of the sea than that you should offend one of these little ones. So we've done this compassion and child care for a number of years, and I'm really committed. You know, my only problem is I'm getting older. It just bugs me. But there's something beautiful happening in the midst of all this. My daughter and her husband, who've been in ministry for many years, called me up one day, and she's, Dad, she said, I have some news for you, and I don't know what you'll think of this, but Darren and I are actually thinking of joining you in the mission. Oh, Maya says, you know what? I've been praying for someone to come and take over and push me out, because I think we're getting to a point where we need some break. And we're still enjoying it. Susan loves it. As soon as we were married, she jumped right in and took over where Anne left off when she passed away, and all things are good. But I want you to know that we do this because we really are passionate about the children in the world. Our director is just one wonderful man who, Jose Prem, he might come into this area sometime. He'd love to come. He is so humble that when he comes with me, he wants me to teach him how to talk about sponsorship. He's my boss. And I says, come on. But God is just working in the lives of many children in about 10, 12 different countries that we're working in. And so then you ask, well, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Well, I'll be honest with you. I used to be a missionary with a shantyman, and it always bothered me that I had to talk about money because it was about raising funds for myself. No missionary enjoys that. I haven't talked to any missionary who says, I love getting after money for my ministry. No, it's hard. But when I talk to you about children, it's a different story. I can be very open, I can be very honest with you and say, look, we have a bunch of children on a table there. They need a sponsor. And that's why we're here. Maybe there's some here that would say, you know, I can do that. It costs $45 a month. You can use your credit card. You don't have to send money in every month. They'll just take it off. A lot of people have told me, I don't even notice it when they take this money off. It's not that big a deal. I can go to a restaurant for one meal and $45 is gone. So we're asking you if you would consider helping us rescue children. And I'm not even going to take time to go into the stories of what children are going through. Perhaps in the history of mankind, we're living in one of the worst times for children. They're going through terrible, terrible things. I wouldn't even describe to you what's happening with children. Just trust me, they need help. And every child we sponsor is taken away from the evil that they want to do to them. We're rescuing them from every child, a kind of abuse that happens. So thank you for having us. And I want to also add that I really appreciate your pastor. I met a lady here some time ago. I came into the church and looking for your pastor. That's maybe a year or two ago. And she said, he's not here, but you can phone him. And she says, you know, and this lady volunteered this. And I don't know who, you might be here this morning, I don't know. But she said, you know, we've had a few problems here, but the pastor that's here now, he's a keeper. And I thought, well, I needed to pass that on to you. He must leave a good impression. He has with me. And pray for him, encourage him, give him a break when he needs it. Watch careful. Pastors burn out and nobody finds out about it. Don't let it happen, because I've seen too many of it. And I believe God has given you a wonderful man of God, and I trust him to lead this congregation. The other thing I wanted to say, I couldn't believe how big a congregation you have here. I had no idea. It's amazing. And I just want to congratulate you for being here. And the final thing I want to say is, when you came into this building this morning, I saw something that I don't always see. People came to greet us, shook our hands, smiled. friendliness, and don't ever let that go. A church that hangs out in the foyer and can't get out is the good church. And we want you to know that Susan and I were really touched by the friendliness that you gave us. So I like to get into the Word of God, and there's something that I love, as some things that I love about preaching. I can share my heart, I can share my thoughts and the prayers I have for the church and for people that are hurting. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. You probably figured that out already. But I do have to admit to you, we're being challenged with some things that are, they call it health. And I feel good. People come to me and they say, you age well, but they don't know what's going inside. I mean, I want to talk to you about eyes. There's an interesting story in the book of Genesis. You know all about Abraham and Sarah in the Bible. They had a slave. Her name was Hagar. Now, Hagar was a quiet, unassuming person, hidden in the background. She reminds me of when I go into the hospital, which I do quite often, and I see these janitors. Their head is always bowed down. They don't want to be. They figure they're invisible because nobody sees a janitor. If you see a doctor coming around, oh yeah, they're But Hagar was one of those kind of people in the background, pushing them up or whatever she was doing. And Abraham and Sarah, as you know the story, didn't appear to be able to have a baby, so they decided to help God. And Sarah said to Abraham, Hagar there, she's not a bad-looking girl. Why don't you take her and have a proxy baby with her for me? So she did, and as soon as Hagar became pregnant, her ego kind of shot up, and she started taunting Sarah. I'm pregnant, look. And Sarah got very angry. Now, I never understood this, still don't understand this story quite, because when Hagar or Sarah complains to God, and God says to Abraham, you do everything she says. No, for crying out loud, it was her idea, wasn't it? She started the whole thing, but God said to Abraham, you do everything she says. In the context of what it was, I guess it was the right thing. But let's get back to Hagar. She flees. She's scared. She runs away. Hagar has never been seen. She's been somebody that did the work. She was never honored. She was never recognized as a person even. She was just an Egyptian slave, which an Egyptian slave was the most despised. So she runs away, takes off, and something wonderful happens to her. God tells her that she's going to have a baby. It's going to be the father of a great nation. A lot of things, he's going to be a terrible man. In fact, we're dealing with him right now. But let's get back to the focus that God is. See, God loves everyone. He even loves Hagar. And even though Abraham and Sarah had never really seen her as a real person, but only as someone that could wash their floors and cook their meals. So here he appears to her, and he says about her child, he shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of his brethren. So that's not a good prophecy, but it was a blessing to Hagar to find out that someone saw her. And this is what she says. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are the God who sees. For she said, I have here also seen him who sees me. She was so shocked that someone actually could see her and acknowledge her and give her a promise. And when I read that verse one day, I'd never noticed this before. I says, wait a minute. This woman was surprised at the visit from God because he was the first one that ever gave her any attention. And it triggered a whole bunch of things in my mind about how we respond to the people that are not well known or that are servants that are just nobodies. And I asked myself, how many people have I passed by that needed a smile, that needed a greeting, that maybe even needed a meal? And I began to search my heart, and I said, Lord, I really don't want to do better. That's where this little story about the Chinese ladies came in. It just threw me off because they responded so quickly. And if you could have seen the change from when they were sitting there with their heads down till when I talked to them, they were shocked. I think they were as shocked as Hagar was that someone saw them. And it just taught me a beautiful lesson. I sometimes tell people, I admit to people I'm a bit crazy. It helps when you try to greet people and you try to be friendly. We're all so stiff and so professional. I don't know what you call it, but it's dumb. We have a world full of needy people that are crying for someone to say, hi, how are you? How's life? When you do that, your whole world opens up. And Jesus acknowledges that this is truly a problem with us. I'd like to talk about 3 different scriptures here that kind of teach this lesson. If you have a Bible, if you want to follow me in John chapter 4, I'd like to read from verses 13 to 35. Now, I just recently had my glasses changed, and last night I was looking at the scriptures that I'm reading, and I found out I could hardly see them. I guess my new glasses are worse than my old glasses, so I have to go back for help. Anyway, I'm going to read from verses 31 to 35 in John chapter 4. I changed my mind. Jesus talks about to the woman at the well. He has shown her the way. He taught her how to believe in the God of Israel. And she becomes a Christian. She becomes a believer. And the disciples, Jesus is sitting at the well of Sychar. He's sitting there just waiting. And this woman appears, and they began a conversation which led her to a point of believing. There's something very unique here. Where were the disciples at this point? They had gone into the city to buy bread. That's an interesting conversation in itself. We'll come back to that a little later. But it seems that any time there was a need, these guys ran out of bread. We'll come to that later. So it says, then they went out, the disciples, and came to him, to Jesus. In the meantime, his disciples urged him, that's Jesus, saying, Rabbi, eat. And he said to them, I have food to eat of which you do not know. Therefore his disciples said to one another, has anyone brought him anything to eat? And then Jesus responds, my food is to do the will of him who sent me, and to finish his work. Now here's the crutch. Do not say there are still 4 months, and then comes the harvest. Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look on the field, for they are already white unto harvest. Jesus is asking his disciples to look. Look, don't focus on bread. That's only a part of life. Look on the field. There may be someone down there that needs bread more than you need it. And Jesus says, the harvest is ripe. The fields are white. I'm going to read a few more verses here. And he who reaps receives wages and gathers fruit for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. So there's this camaraderie when we bring people to Jesus. For this I say is true. One sows, another reaps. And so he's really pushing this idea of reaching out and sowing. And the disciples having a little problem understanding this. Now, let's turn to Mark chapter 8. Now, this one really gets to us. I'm going to read from verse 13, and I'll try to get this thought through to us. They had just witnessed a day or two ago the feeding of thousands of people. Jesus took a small amount of bread, a few loaves, a few fish, and he broke them and fed 4,000 people. Now, if you put that into context of what we're reading here, you have to ask the disciples, where in the world were you when that happened? Let's read it. And he left them, and getting into the boat again, departed to the other side. Now, the disciples had forgot to take bread, and they did not have more than one loaf with them in the boat. Now, Jesus is not talking about bread in the next verse. He's talking about something else. He's trying to teach them. Now, this is what he says. Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. You know what the leaven of the Pharisees was? Hypocrisy. He was trying to teach them what hypocrisy was. And he goes on, and they reasoned among themselves again. Now then we go on. Why do you reason, Jesus says in verse 17, because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive and nor understand? Here's the message that I often hear God say to me. Is your heart yet hardened? I think lack of eyesight connects right to the heart. Lack of seeing people comes from here more than from here. It's a heart issue. Is your heart still hardened, he says? Having eyes, now listen, having eyes, do you not see? Having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the bread? Now he's bringing this back to their mind. The loaves and the thousands, how many baskets full fragments did you take up? Also, when I broke the 7 and 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said 7. And he said to them, how is it that you do not remember? Our memory is pretty short, is it not, when it comes to some of the things God wants to. We may have a high experience in church Sunday morning. On Monday morning, we forgot all about it and go on living our normal life. I don't think a Christian life should be normal in the sense of the status quo. It should be a little radical. It should be constantly looking for an opportunity to see that person who needs Jesus, or maybe that person who needs a meal. Do you know that, and I don't share this to boast, I'm going to tell you something, God is very gracious and kind. That same day, and I go to the mall a lot, but that same day when I came out of the mall, I came into the Safeway store. There's a veteran standing there. He says, I've been trying to find someone to talk to. No one will talk to me. And I said, let's talk. He said, I'm very sick. I have no money. And I need to go see a doctor, but I can't even get to him. And somehow, I don't always believe people when they tell me they need something. I've had some people throw some pretty bad curves at me. But you know, that's part of living. When we do these things as unto the Lord, don't worry about what happens to the gift. Anyway, this veteran, I gave him some help and, of course, guided him a bit. And he went on. I'm just on my way out of Safeway, and 2 little boys, and I always listen to boys that are girls, I overheard them say, Mommy, there's a vending machine right there. Can you get some candy today? And she said, boys, you know what? I would actually gladly give you some candy. I have no change on me. And I overheard this, and so I said, I put my arm around these 2 boys and said, hey, guys, let's go get some change. And I went to the teller, and they were so excited. And I thought, if I hadn't done this, look at the fun I would have missed. There's a lot of fun in doing things for Jesus. And you know, God showed me things that I needed to hear. Now, there's one more story that I think is just beautiful, and it's the story of the Good Samaritan found in Luke chapter 10, and it's so full of teaching. Jesus answered, that's Luke chapter 10, verse 30. A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothes, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. I remember back in Bible school, the principal told us one day that he'd been reading this passage to his family, and his little girl said, "Daddy, which half was dead?" Well, we don't know, but he was in bad shape. Now, by chance, a certain priest came by the road, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side. Now let me, before I move further, say this. You can look someone right in the eyes and not see them. You get it? Get what I mean? Seeing them, but not seeing them. When you see them the way God is talking about seeing them, that means that you stop. And we'll find out what happens when that happens. Likewise, a Levite. These are God's people, Levites and the priests. These guys, these are pastors. They know it all. When he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, these were the despised people. These were the socially rejected people. Samaritans hated the Jews hated the Samaritans. It's kind of like the native population nowadays. There's a lot of hatred, a lot of lack of love. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. Now the seeing reaches right into the heart. He had compassion. So he went to him, bandaged his wounds, poured oil and wine, and set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. I think we don't need to comment a lot about that, do we? It's so obvious. But God sees what we see in our heart. And that's what concerns him, because our heart is really God's heart. When we gave our life to Jesus, we gave our heart to Jesus. We've heard that comment many times, giving our heart to Jesus. If we think about what that means, it's powerful. You know, the heart of Jesus took him to the cross. The heart of Jesus subjected him to cruel men, Roman soldiers, Jewish hatred, crucify him, crucify. All that came from the heart of Jesus. And then when Jesus is risen from the dead, both Jesus, Paul, and Peter all say something about how to live our Christian life. And he says, all three of them say that. Paul says in Philippians chapter 1, verse 29, I believe, to you, he said, it is given on behalf of Christ not only to live for him, but also to suffer for him. So giving our heart to Jesus means that it's unconditional. There's no ifs or buts. If you do this, I'll do that. It's just taking that cross the way Jesus accepted his and say, I don't care what it costs me. My number one purpose in life is to share the love of Jesus. There are many ways of doing it. Sometimes the best way is to say nothing. Next time, God may want us to say something. One of the best ways is to live it, to live the Christian life, to show it by how we love people, how we care, how we bend to a child. There's so many ways in which we can be the Samaritan. Well, this man was amazing. He did not only help him, he went to the innkeeper and he said, look, he says, I'm going on a trip, but you better look after this man. But when I come back, whatever money is owed for this care, I'll pay for it. I mean, he went out all the way. There was no stopping. And I believe that's the real Christian life. Don't you think so? It's not caring. Sometimes it even means losing our reputation because we were honest about an issue. But the truth always comes back to bless us. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. You have blessed Susan and me this morning with the music, the worship team. You've blessed us by the beautiful, friendly faces you showed when you came in, the welcoming. I want to encourage you because that is part of what we're talking about. It's just this friendliness that has no hang-ups, no pride, no withholding, just a sense of, hey, I'm glad to see you attitude. Keep it up because God loves cheerful people. He also loves cheerful givers. Now back just before I go, we're going to have a little video playing when I leave the pulpit. But before I go, I'd like to encourage you to consider maybe taking a child. We would be so delighted if some children were sponsored this morning. The cost of a sponsorship is $45. You can use a Visa or a debit or check, whatever, and it'll be withdrawn every month at a certain day. And you will hear from our head office. They'll write you a letter and to thank you, first of all, for sponsoring. And they will be in touch with you. The other thing that's involved here, and it's not a must, but a good thing, we encourage writing letters to your sponsored child. Some people say, I don't write letters. Some people in the Mennonite community say, I don't even write German or English. That's okay. If you sponsor a child, you are already doing 90% of what's needed. That 10% is a friendship experience where you learn to know the child. A lot of people have different ways. We have families who let's say you're a family of 3 children. They will sponsor a child for every child, and then they teach them how to write nice letters. They teach them how to incorporate Christianity into their letter writing, talking about Jesus, talking about their habits, their hobbies, talk about their mom and dad and their family. You can slip a little picture in your letter to the child, a picture of your family, a picture of your whatever you do, hobbies and so on. These kids are so excited. My son was in a country, and he said this little boy had a letter. It by now was all greasy, but he running through the streets in the village said, I got a letter from my sponsor. If you could understand how amazing this is, putting yourself into their culture. I suppose we could say back to Hagar, I was actually seen. And you know, when we sponsor our children, there is a sense in which we see, and we see for Jesus, because you are the only people. The church is the only strength we have to keep the mission going. If it wasn't for the churches, we wouldn't have a mission. We need, and the sponsorship is what keeps our children going, what changes lives, what brings salvation to many. And now the new entrepreneurial program is teaching them how to get on their own feet. All these things are part of our ministry as children, as missionaries. We once said, when I was with the Shantymen, we had a saying, sometimes going into all the world means staying right here. So when you write a letter to a child in Uganda or Mexico, many countries, you write a letter to one of those children, you are actually going into the world to share Jesus. And isn't it nice that you can do that right from your own home? It's so easy to be a missionary nowadays because there's so many things online missionary work. Many of our missionaries are working right from Canada, even though they're working with people in different countries. So I'd encourage you to consider asking the Lord if maybe you could help us with this. And we thank you so much. And thank you again. And when your pastor comes back, please tell him I love his congregation. God bless you. And we're going to have a little video now. Thank you.
At Child Care International, we know that there are over 1 billion children in the world living in poverty. 1 in 5 children do not have access to safe drinking water, and 57 million children worldwide do not attend primary school each year. information like this can be overwhelming. Although you may not be able to change the whole world, you can change one child's world. Childcare International partners with Christian leaders in 9 different countries who have a heart and vision to help children and families in their local communities. Like Pastor Clayton in northern Uganda. Pastor Clayton's heart was broken for children orphaned by civil war, infected by HIV/AIDS, and abandoned by family who were unable to care for them. So Pastor Clayton did what was needed most. He started a school. Childcare International comes alongside to support trusted pastors like Clayton, who are rooted in their community and understand the needs of the children. Our mission is to break the cycle of poverty one child at a time by partnering with organizations like Faith Alive Academy in northern Uganda. Through partnerships like this, children are connected and supported through a specialized sponsorship program. Our purpose is to ensure that children under our care become all God created them to be. Your financial support makes it possible for Childcare International to train and equip children, helping them to make good decisions for their future. When you sponsor a child, they receive a faith-based education, nutritious meals, access to safe drinking water, and basic health care. When a school has childcare-sponsored children, all of the children are fed, educated, and receive safe drinking water. Schools like Faith Alive Academy are impacting the growth and health of their community. Not only are Faith Alive children excelling in school, but others in the community are engaging in programs that are helping them embrace healthier lifestyles. Many are turning away from things like drugs, alcohol, and crime. Surrounding schools and government officials are noticing the difference the school is making. These self-disciplined, motivated students and teachers are making an impact in their country. How can you change the world? One child at a time. To help the dreams of a child come alive, visit childcareinternational.ca. Your one child is waiting.